This diagram is of the eye and its various components. The eye is a globe-shaped organ that is split into three different tunics, or layers: the fibrous tunic, the vascular tunic, and the sensory tunic. Using this diagram, I will explain the structure and function of each of these three tunics. The fibrous tunic is the outermost layer and serves to protect the more sensitive structures beneath. This tunic includes the sclera, cornea, and conjunctiva. The sclera is more commonly known as the white of the eye and provides strength, shape, and structure to the eye. As the sclera passes in the front of the eye, it bulges and becomes the cornea. The cornea is not opaque, but is actually transparent, which allows for light to enter the inside of the eye. The cornea is one of the few structures that does not contain blood vessels and instead relies on the eye fluids for nutrients. Since the cornea covers the lens, one of the main components to sight, whenever corrections must be made surgically, the cornea must be cut to get to the lens. A radiokeratotomy is one example. A radiokeratotomy, or RK, is an incision of the cornea for treatment of nearsightedness or astigmatism, which is abbreviated AST. The conjunctiva cover the outer surface of the eye and line the eyelids. The second tunic is the vascular tunic. The vascular tunic is the middle layer of the eye and is also known as the uvea. The uvea consists of the choroid, iris, and ciliary body. The choroid provides blood supply for the entire eye. It also protects the eye by using its pigmented cells to prevent extraneous light from entering the inside of the eye. A small opening at the back of the choroid is what allows the optic nerve to enter the eye. The front section of the choroid has two modified structures, the iris and the ciliary body. The iris is the part of the eye that is colored and is a contractile membrane with a perforated center called the pupil. The iris regulates the amount of light that is let into the eye by changing the size of the pupil to let in more or less light. The ciliary body is a circular muscle that produces aqueous humor. The aqueous humor is one of two major fluids in the eye. The aqueous humor is found in the posterior and anterior chambers of the anterior eye. This is the fluid that gives nutrients to the cornea and the lens mentioned earlier. The ciliary body is attached to a capsular bag that holds the lens between the suspensory ligaments. As the ciliary muscles contract and relax, the shape of the lens changes, allowing the eye to focus on an image. This process is called accommodation, abbreviated ACC. When elderly individuals get cataracts, this is due to a cloudy lens. Cataracts are opacities that form on the lens and impair vision, and are usually composed of proteins that have built up over time. In order to repair lenses with cataracts, patients usually undergo phagoemulsification. Phagoemulsification is a method of treating cataracts that uses ultrasonic waves to disintegrate a cloudy lens, which is then aspirated and removed and replaced with an artificial lens. The third tunic is the sensory tunic, the one responsible for vision. The sensory tunic is the delicate double-layered retina. It consists of a thin outer pigmented layer that covers the choroid and a thick inner nervous layer. The retina is responsible for the reception and transmission of visual impulses to the brain. It has two different types of receptors: rods, which function in dim light and produce black and white vision, and cones, which function in bright light and produce color vision. Achromatophagia, otherwise known as color blindness, is a severe congenital deficiency in color perception caused by abnormalities in the cones. In the central portion of the retina is a highly sensitive area called the macula. In the center of the macula is the fovea, which is the area of the eye that receives light when you focus on an object. Nyctalopia, also known as night blindness, is impaired vision in dim light and can be due to cataracts, vitamin A deficiency, medications, or genetic abnormalities. The other major humor of the eye is the vitreous humor, a jelly-like substance that fills the posterior cavity of the eye. The vitreous humor, lens, and aqueous humor are the refractive structures of the eye and focus light rays sharply on the retina. If any of these structures is not working properly, vision is impaired.
This diagram shown is of the lacrimal apparatus and is responsible for producing and draining tears. It is made up of the lacrimal gland conjunctiva, lower and upper punctum, lacrimal sac, nasolacrimal duct, and the nasal cavity. Two movable folds of the skin constitute the eyelids, each with eyelashes that protect the front of the eye. The conjunctiva lines the inner surface of the cornea and eyelids and is located here. The lacrimal glands produce tears that bathe and lubricate the eyes. They lie superior into the outer edge of each eye, seen here. The tears collect at the two inner edges of the eyes called the canthi. They are not shown on the diagram but are located here and here. Next, the tears pass through pinpoint openings called the upper and lower punctum and into the lacrimal canals here. The lacrimal canals lead to the lacrimal sac and then to the nasolacrimal duct, eventually reaching the mucous membranes lining the nasal cavity. There are many diseases associated with this apparatus. One is conjunctivitis, which is inflammation of the conjunctiva with vascular congestion that produces a red or pink eye. This condition may be secondary to allergy or viral, bacterial, or fungal infections. A second disease called epiphora is the abnormal overflow of tears. This is commonly caused by an obstruction to the tear ducts. An operation can usually clear out a duct in order to cure this condition. A doctor of optometry, abbreviated OD, is the specialist that diagnoses and treats these types of disorders. One way that an OD determines if a patient has epiphora is by a dacrocystography. This is a radiographic imaging procedure of the nasolacrimal glands and ducts. It is performed for excess tearing to determine the cause of hypersecretion of the lacrimal gland or obstruction in the passages.
This is a diagram of the ear structures. The outer part that you can see and pierce is called the auricle, which is here. It basically catches sound waves that are going through the air and sends them down the external auditory canal, which is this tube. It can also just be called the ear canal. It's lined with glands that produce earwax, which is also known as cerumen. The sticky wax is what catches foreign particles and keeps them from getting deep into your ear canal. The tympanic membrane, located here, is your eardrum. It's a flat membranous structure that stretches across the end of the ear canal. So the sound waves that the auricle catches travel down and vibrate against the eardrum. The eardrum then vibrates against the small little bones on the internal side called the malleus, incus, and stapes. These can also be referred to as the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. They're the three smallest bones in the body, and they make up the middle ear. They are located within the tympanic cavity and form a connection between the tympanic membrane and the cochlea, which is the first structure of the inner ear. It looks like the body of a snail and is filled with a fluid called perilymph. The inner surfaces are lined with a highly sensitive hearing structure called the organ of Corti. It contains tiny nerve endings called hair cells. A membrane-covered opening on the external surface of the cochlea is called the oval window and is the place where the stapes attaches, seen here. So when the little bones in the inner ear vibrate, that causes the stapes to gently pump against the oval window, which causes the perilymph fluid to move the hair cells, and that generates the impulses that are transmitted to the brain by the way of the auditory nerve, which you can see here. It's labeled as the vestibulocochlear nerve in this picture. In the brain, these impulses are then interpreted as sound. The eustachian tube is what connects the middle ear to the pharynx and helps equalize pressure on the outer and inner surfaces of the eardrum. So if pressure builds up on either side of the membrane, it will trigger you to swallow, and that will help correct it. The inner ear also consists of a system of fluid-filled tubes, sacs, and nerves that connect these structures to the brain. It's referred to as the labyrinth because of its maze-like design. It rests inside the skull bones and includes both the cochlear system to hear and the vestibular system for balance and eye movements. The vestibular system contains the semicircular canals, which are these loops, and also the vestibule, which connects the cochlea and the semicircular canals. There are many complex structures in this part that are responsible for maintaining static and dynamic equilibrium. Otitis media is a very common medical condition of the ear. It is abbreviated as OM and is an inflammation of the middle ear. It is commonly caused by a virus or bacterium. It's found most commonly in infants and young children, especially in the presence of a URI, or upper respiratory infection. Symptoms commonly include earache and draining of pus from the ear. If it gets really bad, it could lead to infection of the mastoid process or inflammation of the brain tissue near the middle ear. The usual treatment for children with this recurrent infection is the use of PE tubes, or pressure equalizing tubes. PE tube placement is a medical procedure in which tubes are passed through the tympanic membrane and help drain fluid from the middle ear. They typically remain in the ear for several months and then fall out on their own, or they can be removed surgically. Recurrent episodes of OM may also cause scarring of the tympanic membrane, which can lead to hearing loss. Hearing loss can be detected by an audiometry test, which is a diagnostic procedure. In audiometry, pure tones of various sound wave frequencies and intensities are delivered through earphones to each ear individually while the patient indicates if the tone was heard. The minimum intensity of volume required to hear each tone is graphed.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
Light goes through the pupil and into your eye. Iris gives it color, blue eyes can't lie. Your lens changes shape to make your eye focus. Cornea's got blood vessels, it ain't bogus. Light hits the retina at the back of the eye. Rods see black and white, cones see colors fly. If your eyes be having problems, you know who to see. Your ophthalmologist has got his degree. He'll look at your eyes and make your pupils wide. Ocular melanoma might leave you blind. He'll take out your eyeball with enucleation, so spread eye awareness all across this nation.
External ear and never stops growing, made up of the oracle your jewelry be showing. Hammer, anvil, stirrup, they aren't what you think. They're auditory ossicles without them you'd sink. They help you keep your balance when you spin it around, make you grab a wall instead of hitting the ground. Next comes the cochlea, looking like a snail, holding all those many hairs that never ever fail. The dot that knows your ears has got a lot to say, the otolaryngologist.
Do you pronounce it that way?
Autosclerosis is not a fun one. Hearing loss? I'm sorry, hun. Lots of things can help when your hearing is broke, so Patty told me this procedure ain't a joke.
Thanks for joining us for this special census lesson. We really appreciate you paying attention. We're gonna sign off now because we tired of rapping. We really wish instead that we were home napping.